Hello, my name is Sandy Adomaitis, the social media director for the PAGE International Screenwriting Awards, and your host for the Writers Hangout, a podcast that celebrates the many stages of writing, from inspiration to the first draft, revising, getting a project made, and everything in between. We'll talk to the best and the brightest in the entertainment industry and create a space where you can hang out, learn from the pros, and have fun. Hey, writers, it's Sandy. I'm coming to you from the beautiful state of Maine. I gotta tell you, I'm thinking of just staying here, and I think I can get my cat, Sophie Joe, shipped to me, but the breeze here is so refreshing. When you live in LA, the only time there's a breeze, it's the Santa Ana winds, and it's hot. It is so annoying. But I'm glad you're with us today on the Writers Hangout because our guest is Kristin Overn, who is the founder and executive director of the PAGE International Screenwriting Awards. She began her film career as a producer's assistant and script reader at companies like Davis Entertainment, Bonneville Worldwide, and 20th Century Fox. And since that time, Kristin has consulted, collaborated, and developed screenplays with dozens of writers, producers, and production companies. Kristin also has extensive experience in production, and she has served as a producer, line producer, and UPM on various independent features, original sitcom pilots, several award-winning short films, TV commercials, and videos. Kristin is a member of the Producer and Directors Guild. Let's get started. Kristin Overn, thank you so much for joining us on the Writers Hangout.
I'm so glad to be here, Sandy. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you and all of our writers and contestants and all your listeners.
I've been making all the judges do this. Can we play a little game of Would You Rather?
I was afraid you were going to do that to me. All right, go for it. Let's give it a go.
Would you rather give up air conditioning and heating for the rest of your life or give up the internet for the rest of your life?
Oh, man, that's hard. I am so temperature sensitive, Sandy. I mean, if I get too hot or cold, I melt. But how do you survive in this world without the internet? How would we run the contest? So I guess I'd have to give up.
Yes, for the sake of everyone else, let's give up air conditioning and heating.
Okay. It's a noble sort of sacrifice.
Yes.
Right?
Would you rather oversleep every day for a week or not get any sleep at all for 4 days?
Oh, oversleep. Easy. I'll sleep anytime.
Yes. Would you rather have a child every year for 20 years or never have any children at all?
Oh, I guess have no children, because 20 children? I know people in the olden days, they did, but man, I can't conceive of it.
Would you rather be the absolute best at something that no one takes seriously or be average at something well respected?
I'd rather be the best at whatever it was that I was passionate about.
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the best feeling, you know.
My last would you rather for you, Kristin. Would you rather have a mullet for a year or be bald, no wigs, for 6 months?
I'll take the mullet. I'll go with the mullet.
Go with the mullet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That wraps it up for Would You Rather. And I think we have a little more insight into you, Kristin. You do not like the heat.
Yeah.
Or the cold.
Or the cold. I'm a delicate flower, you know. So.
Why did you start the PAGE International Screenwriting Awards?
Yeah, it's a bit of a story. I'll give you a little backstory on it. I came from theater. I studied theater at Northwestern and was involved in directing and playwriting. I started as an actor in the very beginning, but I quickly discovered directing classes and playwriting classes were my favorites and the most stimulating and creative. And man, I love the collaborative process and storytelling and developing scripts and all of that. And when I got out of school, I did work at places like the Playwright Center in Chicago and in Minneapolis, and I directed some plays, but it was a hard road, particularly for a woman at the time. And there weren't a lot of opportunities. It was difficult to foresee how I would make a living doing this. And I had a lot of
Right.
friends who had moved to Los Angeles, and they told me, you should come out. You should come out. You'd be a great D girl, was what they called them back then, a development girl, because they knew how much I loved working on stories and developing scripts. And I love the movies, of course. So I did it. I took the leap. I came out to Los Angeles, and my first job there was a place called Davis Entertainment, working as
Yes,
an
very
assistant.
familiar with Davis Entertainment. Shout out to John Davis out there.
Shout out to John Davis and all our pals from Davis Entertainment, which is where you and I met years ago. And
Yes.
been compatriots and friends ever since. And I worked in development for a while. I was an assistant. I learned the ropes in the industry, both in television and film. I had the opportunity to work in both. And then I got a break. I got an opportunity to produce an independent film and with somebody who I had been working with. And so I moved into production for a while. It was a whole different world. I had produced theater, so I had some feeling for it. But so for several years, though, I moved into production in film, and I learned how to budget. I learned how to run a set, and it was really interesting, informative work, really hard, really long hours,
Yes.
skipping from job to job and not making an independent film, not making a lot of money at all. So it was really, get tough to stay afloat. But
Right.
one of the things I learned was that a lot of the people making independent films are people who somehow got the money together to make their own project. But a lot of the scripts were pretty weak, and I could see they weren't going to go anywhere. And it was frustrating for me. And I didn't have a lot of input at working on the production side. I didn't have a lot of input into that. So it wasn't ultimately the right place for me to land. But the other thing I learned was that there were a lot of people in the business looking for new scripts and new material to produce, but they had a hard time finding it. And of course, I knew a lot of writers desperately looking for producers and managers to help them move forward in their careers. And I saw an opportunity to use a contest as sort of a de facto development department where I could,
Interesting.
yeah,
Oh,
where the judges could review the scripts the same way the reading staff at Davis would review the scripts, right?
right.
And the scripts would ultimately get funneled up higher and higher up the ladder and eventually to John if they were really special. And so I thought we could create a similar sort of process within the contest format. There were a lot of contests out there at the time, a couple well known. A lot of them had not great reputations. So,
Right. Can I
yeah,
pause you there? In the beginning, contests weren't all that well respected.
right, not at all. And
You must have worked really hard to make sure you were in that basket, that you were in that part of the world.
absolutely. And that was it was critical to make this work because I didn't want to be part of anything like that, obviously. And there were two factors to it. One was there was not social media at the time. We're talking about the like 2003 was when I
Right.
first got this idea. And when December of 2003 was when we first started.
Oh, I love that you have the exact month down. That's
Oh
great.
yeah, I remember. but I really wanted to work to make sure it wasn't going to develop a reputation like that. And it was harder then because social media wasn't in existence. So, and it wasn't as easy to track down people or get information. It wasn't out there. So you just didn't kind of know what these contests really were, who was running them. And so what I did when I started the PAGE Awards was, believe it or not, I actually entered a script that I had written years ago into 8 different contests. I wanted to know what the experience was like for the writer. What is it like to be a contestant in one of these contests?
Oh,
And how can I make it a better experience?
I see.
And what I learned was that it was kind of a heartbreaking experience. You really felt like you were throwing your script into a black hole. There was no communication back from them. You didn't know what the status was. Often they wouldn't update or announce the quarterfinalists or whatever when they said they were going to. So it was really, I felt it was critical to be very communicative with writers, to make them feel like this is real, you're part of something, we are reading your script, we are here for you. And so that's something that's really been important to us at the PAGE Awards, is to be very communicative, be very transparent. And I think anybody who has communicated with Zoe, has emailed Zoe, is pretty impressed. She gets back to people within moments. Sometimes she's amazing. And
We
she's
love
very,
Zoe.
yeah, very helpful and thorough. And what we've done on social media, Sandy, back at you. I mean, you have created a real community
Oh,
on our
thank
social media
you.
pages. You have, and I think writers really appreciate it. Whenever I tune into the pages, it seems like such fun, and I watch the communication you have back and forth with writers. It's just great. And
I love the writing community out there
yeah,
on Twitter. There's a lot of more interaction on Twitter. I
right.
love the writers out there. I think I'm doing something funny, and they come back at me with something funnier tenfold.
I
They're
know,
a
right?
great, great group. And they're also really supportive of each other on Twitter. They read each other's scripts. Sometimes a writer will come on and they're having a bad day, and everybody just responds and kind of cheers them up. It's wonderful.
They cheer
Another
each
thing you
other.
should be very proud of creating.
Well, that's on you, babe. So I
Okay.
thank you so much, and this podcast too. So thank you for adding this into the mix for us. I could digress with that, but back on track in terms of the PAGE Awards. It was really important to me to make sure that people felt like we were there for them. We were communicating with them. We were available if they have questions, and we're real. And another thing that was important to me was to embrace the global community. Luckily, this was happening right at a time when the internet was really growing and we could start accepting entries online. And I saw that this was creating a huge opportunity for writers from all around the world to submit their scripts to Hollywood. So we set up this online submission system, which was fairly new at the time. And initially, I would say maybe a quarter of the scripts came in online. Now, of course, all of them do. Over the years, it's become the only way
Right.
we accept entries anymore. But that was brand new at the time. And
How did you handle that? How did you handle all those scripts, copies?
mailed copies. Yeah, there were
Yeah.
stacks and stacks of mailed copies, which we would deliver to judges in boxes to read. And it was quite, it was
Oh,
very hands on.
wow.
Yeah. So it was, but I kind of miss, I'm kind of a dinosaur. I kind of miss those hard copies, but I don't see them anymore. We don't have them anymore. It's all online. But that was great because it made it possible for writers from all around the world to submit their scripts. And that was really exciting to me
So,
because
so basically, you were in the industry, which I know, of course, but you were in the industry, and you kind of saw an avenue.
I saw a need
Yeah,
to connect.
a need, right?
There were all, well, on two fronts. There were all these writers out there looking to get their scripts into hands of people who would be interested in signing them, producing their screenplays, whatever. And there were all these young managers, junior agents, independent producers looking for great scripts, but they had no reading staff like we had at Davis because, unless you have a lot of money to pay readers, you're
Yeah,
working independently and you're having to read 100, 200 scripts to find something you love. Whereas with the PAGE Awards, we could create that process, that development department for them. So the people who are reading our scripts in the semifinal and final rounds are people like independent producers who don't have a huge development department. They're looking for great projects. And so they're grateful to us for narrowing it down to what we viewed anyway as the best scripts of the year. And they read 25 scripts or 10 scripts, and they inevitably, almost everyone who judges for us in those final rounds finds some special project that they're interested in pursuing. And
interesting.
that's why we've ended up with so many success stories out of the contest over the years. And
Do you want to talk about some of the success stories?
oh man, that's a whole That's a whole long list. It's really exciting. Yeah. There have been a bunch of things that have happened lately for some of our winners. I just binge watched The Terminal List on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And our 2013 grand prize winner, Brooke Roberts, is a producer and writer on that. She wrote the 7th episode. It's always fun to see our writers' names up on the screen in the episodes that they write or the movies that they've written. And that's, their names come up and I'm like, yeah, that's a page.
Yeah, Brooke does a lot of TV work. She is one talented writer.
She's amazing.
She's a superstar.
Let's just list some of the amazing TV writers. Janet Lynn, help me because you'll remember some of it. Rob Sudduth, VJ Boyd, Dava Avina.
VJ Boyd, yes, he's constantly working.
Elaine Lowe, she just wrote a wonderful article for Logline for us about the couple of series she's written. I think she won the contest in 2019 and she's worked on a couple of shows since, and she wrote a great article in our
And Mr. Ozark himself?
Well, Bill Dubuque, yeah. Bill Dubuque won the Gold Prize in 2008 and was signed by Zero Gravity Management. He then was hired to write The Judge, which was the Robert Downey Jr. movie. He wrote The Accountant. Ben Affleck loved that movie. I think they're making a sequel of it. And he created Ozark with Mark Williams at Zero Gravity.
We've got Howard Jordan Jr., who is so funny.
So funny. Lucy Luna. I mean, Stephen
Dava Avina,
yes.
Bill Bayless.
Stephen Canals, who created Pose, which was a groundbreaking series.
Mark Boutros. We got Andy and Matt.
There are hundreds, I think, at this point.
Don't forget Graham Norris. He's so good, Graham Norris. Sorry, I had to get him in.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's
and that's really just TV. That's not film.
Fun to, yeah, I know. So the film people, gosh, obviously Maggie's a great story. That was our 2010 Gold Prize winner in the thriller horror category. Beautiful script. And it got picked up right away. The writer, John Scott, got signed and they got a producer attached and director. It went through lost some people, gained some people back. It's the usual movie process. So it took some time. But the movie got made. And I was lucky enough to go to Cannes in 2015, the film festival. And I was walking around, and almost everywhere I went, I came up against a poster for a movie called Maggie with Arnold Schwarzenegger's face and Abigail Breslin. The movie was about to premiere. It did not premiere at Cannes, but it was about to premiere that month. And so they had posters up all over town, and it was really fun to see that. It was like, wow, that's a Page winner. I'm leaving out a bunch of people. I don't want to spend the
you can go to the website, right?
Right. We have a success stories page, and you can see some of the people who've won and find out what they're doing. Click on their IMDb page. But anyway, the bottom line is I think the process that we created has been really successful. It's really helped a lot of writers, and I'm really proud and happy about that. It keeps me going every day. I also want to say a lot of that is due to our judges. And doubling back to your original question, one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure that the people who are reading the scripts submitted to us were professionals. I think a lot of contests, they don't hire professionals to read the scripts. They have interns working for free or students. And it was so important that the people who read our scripts know the industry, know what they're doing. I mean, anybody can have an opinion. Anybody can have a great opinion. I'm not even dissing the interns who may be reading scripts elsewhere. They may be brilliant people.
Yes.
But if you don't know what the industry is looking for, you're not going to be really effective at winnowing the scripts down to the kinds of projects that managers and producers and agents are going to be interested in when they read them in the final rounds. And again, I think the reason that we have such a good reputation amongst the industry is because our early round judges know what they're doing.
Yes. And I know personally that's very, very important to you, Kristin, that we have a good reputation, that the PAGE Awards keeps and maintains their good reputation. It's very important to the PAGE Awards.
Credit the team. I mean, I'm very picky about the people who work for us, but they're amazing. I mean,
Yes.
I'm so happy that you did that series of interviews you just did with our judges. I thank you so much for doing that. That was amazing. I listened to
That
them
was
all.
so much fun.
They were
And I think the
amazing.
writers, the screenwriters out there got something out of it.
I hope one of the things they got out of it was that these people are really experienced and smart, but most of all, they really care. They love the industry. They love film and television. They're so knowledgeable and they want you to succeed. They want to read great scripts. They're searching for those great projects. And when I'll tell you, these scorecards we get in from people when they find something they love, I mean, you're posting some of them on social media. They're they're such cheerleaders for you guys. When they find a great script they love, they are over the moon and really excited. And often they're telling me, listen, hey, I think I could get this script to so and so who's looking for exactly this kind of project, or I'd love to champion this, or at least talk to the writer. And these are just the early round judges. I want to emphasize these people that you've been interviewing are people who are reading the scripts in the first, second, and third round of the contest. So, right from the get go, that's what you're
That's
getting
great.
here. Yeah.
I'm curious I want to go back to something when you were saying that to learn the process, you entered a script just to see what happens and who communicates with you and who do you not hear back from. Should a screenwriter enter their script in more than one contest?
Oh, yeah. But vet them. I mean, do your due diligence. There are websites like moviebites.com where you can, and forums, various places, but where you can see what other writers' experiences have been with contests. And they'll complain, and you kind of have to filter the complaints. If somebody's just complaining because their script didn't advance, you need to figure that out. But there are a lot of other good contests out there now. And every place you enter, you're going to get different people reading your script. You're going to get different opinions. And at the end of the day, this is a very subjective business. And even here at Page, we often get scorecards back that are very conflicting from two different judges because they're different human beings with different opinions and different experiences, and they focus on different things. We can standardize the process all we want with our 10 different categories that they judge the scripts in, but at the end of the day, they're human beings with their own take on things.
Right.
And, yeah. And in fact, back to your original question, my experience with that script I entered in those contests. Oh, and I should say that none of those contests actually exist anymore. They were each only around for a few years and then they shut down. But anyhow, my experience with them was actually a perfect example of why it's important to get your script out to as many places as possible. The result that I experienced with that script was it won one of the contests. It placed as a finalist or semifinalist in 3 of the others, and it went absolutely nowhere in the other 4. In fact, the day after I found out the script won that one contest, I got a rejection letter from one of the others telling me the script hadn't made it past the first round. So was it great or terrible? Which of those judges were right? And I would say, arguably, they all were. I mean, the script had strengths, it had weaknesses. Some of the readers really liked the characters in the story, I guess. Others didn't. I mean, none of them gave me any notes or feedback, so I don't know exactly what they thought. Oh, and by the way, that's exactly why we started offering judges feedback through the PAGE Awards, because I wanted our contestants to have the chance to find out what our judges really think of their script, what they think its strengths and its weaknesses are, how they score it, and what they think the writer can do to take their work to the next level. And a lot of our writers tell us that getting this feedback is the most helpful and rewarding part of entering the contest. So I definitely encourage people to do that if they can.
What happens if a judge or you come across a script? I mean, you guys know people, especially if the judges are living in LA. What happens if you come
That
across a
happens.
script by somebody you know?
That happens. And the judges know, they recuse themselves. If they read a script and they know the writer, maybe they went to school
Right.
together, they're in a writer's group, they previously worked with that writer on that project or another project, they'll recuse themselves. They'll tell Zoe, I know this writer, I can't evaluate the script.
Oh, good. Okay, Kristin. Do you like writers and why?
I will say most often, because truly writers are the most interesting people. They live in their heads, they live in their imaginations, and those are my favorite kinds of people. But of course, there are writers who are difficult. And we have encountered some writers at the PAGE Awards, for example, who we're about to make our quarterfinalist announcement in a few days. And every year when that happens, we get a few emails from people who are really angry and upset, and there's a lot of cursing involved, and Zoe has to deal with that. And it comes from frustration, and you've written something really wonderful and you're just really mad that
Right.
these stupid judges didn't get it. But writing angry emails and posting online that people are in Hollywood are all idiots or whatever is not really a
Right.
smart move, in my opinion. But people do it, and so I would say that's
Don't be that writer.
don't be that writer. Don't be
Yeah.
that. Be a pro.
Yeah, as much as our reputation and we fight to keep it, you as a writer, yes, maybe you can get a job, but how you act in that job and how you treat the executives at the studio, it counts for the next time when your name comes up in a meeting.
It's important. Sandy, I remember I learned something really important way back at Davis. I remember reading some scripts by a writer who was hired constantly. And I just thought his writing was really kind of dull, really not great. There are better writers out there. So I asked one of my bosses, I said, why are they hiring this guy all the time? There are better writers out there. And she shrugged and she just said, everybody loves him. They love working with him.
Oh, interesting.
So it was, now granted, it was a bit of a boys' club back then. And, but that applies to just any human being. You like working with people who you trust,
Yes.
who are collaborative and fun and easy to work with. And you want to work with those people again because it just makes the process easier.
Do you mind answering a question or two from the listeners of the Writers Hangout?
Of course.
I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm just going to read it. The first question is from Frank McDonald. Are producers looking for blockbuster movie scripts? Is anyone looking for rom-coms anymore? So that's a two-parter.
Oh, sure. Well, blockbuster movie scripts. Sure, certain producers are looking for blockbusters, but when they're looking for blockbusters, they're looking for IP or a major movie franchise like Top Gun.
Yes.
And they're looking for experienced writers and projects that are already have some traction as graphic novels or books, whatever. They're not looking for that kind of a project from a brand new writer, which is not to say you can't write that kind of movie. It may be a great spec script for you. It may get you some attention from a manager, but odds are you're not going to get your blockbuster movie produced as a new writer. However,
True.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, but rom-coms are actually pretty huge at the moment, I think. There's been a spate of them. I think people are looking for fun, escapist movies right now. So I'd say right now is a great time for rom-coms.
Cool.
People are looking for a way to escape. They're looking for fun. Times are kind of tough. So whenever that happens, I think people are looking to go to the movies for a little escape.
This is from Charles Kent. He sent this question. The screenplay I have submitted has entirely original music soundtrack, written in the same vein as Grease, Saturday Night Fever, and A Star is Born. I have inserted the first verse of each song in my screenplay, but my question is, how is a screenplay assessed when a soundtrack has not been heard? Very good question, Charles.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, you don't want our judges evaluating your music. You don't know what their musical taste is. They're not professional musicians. So what you've done is the right thing to do. Just insert the first verse or whatever is critical to know, whatever moves the story forward. I mean, to digress for a second, there's actually three different types of movie musicals. And one would be a musical where the characters are musicians and singers, and you're seeing them on stage, for example, actually performing. The other type is more like a standard stage musical, like Grease or Sweeney Todd or something, where you'll see where the action is actually moving forward. The characters are singing certain sections of the action, in a sense. So in that case, you would want to include all of your lyrics. But in terms of the way our judges evaluate those, they're evaluating the exact same things. They're evaluating the concept, the formatting of your script, the themes, the characters, the dialogue that's included, and potentially the lyrics, if that's part of it, and the plot and the structure. And so it's all the same. So you don't really have to
Yes.
worry about including the music.
Yeah, that makes sense. A good story is a good story.
Exactly, exactly. And, our judges, arguably, the music, the composition of any movie is really critical to its success at the end of the day, but you're not evaluating that when you're evaluating the initial screenplay either. It's just more integral. I understand his question. It's more a part of the story if it's actually a musical film, but it's not critical for us to listen to the music in order to evaluate the story.
Right. Now, I've asked this question to every PAGE judge, and I'd like to ask you, what do you say to a writer who knows they wrote a good script, but it doesn't place or win in a writing competition?
3 things, a couple that our judges have said. First of all, don't get discouraged. This is a very subjective business, as we've discussed. Everybody who reads your script is going to have a different opinion. And so a lot of it is luck of the draw in terms of who that individual is reading your story when it's submitted, and what may do well in one contest may not in another. And we see that all the time. I mean, I see scripts that have won the nickel and didn't do that well in the PAGE Awards. And I've gone back and said, wait a second, what happened? What did we miss? And I read the script and I thought, I understand why it won their contest. I also understand why our judges didn't advance it beyond the quarterfinals in the PAGE Awards. So it's a very subjective process. You need to just keep getting your work out there and keep your heart strong. Don't let
Yes.
the vicissitudes of this industry get to you, because it's hard. You've tackled something really tough trying to become a screenwriter, a professional screenwriter. And it takes a long time, and you're going to go through a lot of disappointments. And that's just part of the process. Obviously, keep writing, keep studying your craft. Our judges have said this. Read books, take online courses, continue to watch movies and read other screenplays. Super important. You really get a great sense of how a screenplay works by reading other screenplays. And
That's
just keep
wonderful.
evolving as an artist. And eventually you'll find your path if you're persistent and if you keep evolving. If you stagnate, if you quit, well, obviously, it's not going to work. But
Right.
if you keep moving forward, you'll find your path. And
I
also,
like that.
I will add one more thing. Consider that maybe your screenplay isn't as strong as it could be. Maybe there's something missing. And so consider getting notes. Granted, not all notes are equal. I mean, get more than one set of notes. It's like enter more than one contest, get more than one set of notes. Different people have different opinions, but you can glean something from all of them. I'll tell you a story about one of my favorite stories. I was working with a producer developing a screenplay. And we were at a point where we were a little burnt out and couldn't see it clearly. It's a producer or development exec, when they're working on a script, it's like becoming the writer. You get so involved, you can't necessarily see it perfectly clearly. So we always send it out for notes. I mean, I send scripts out to our judges for notes all the time, anonymously, because I want to know what their impressions are of the stuff that I'm helping people develop. So we send out this particular project to, I don't know, half a dozen people. And one of them was to his buddy, Alan. Now, we had sent the script to Alan before and other projects. And Alan's a very negative guy. He's like Mikey. He hates everything, right? he never has a nice thing to say. And I said, why are you sending this to Alan? You know he's going to hate it. He's not going to have anything nice to say. And he said, that's exactly why I'm sending it to him. I want to know what's the worst. He will find anything negative he possibly can to say. So what you want to know before you send your script out to the industry is find out what's the worst they can say to you. If they've got really deep structural notes that make sense, fix those. You've got a problem. If they're starting to throw a lot of just tiny little picky, this joke isn't funny, or I don't like the color of her dress, or whatever minor thing at you, then you've got something, because they're having a really hard time finding.
Interesting. Oh, that's really good.
Well, so I always say, find your Alan when you're ready. I mean, it's tough. Alan is tough, but find your Alan in your life. Find the person who's going to give you those notes that are so tough that you'll know what's the worst they can say. If they're not going to like your script, what's the worst they can say?
Right. Now, besides screenwriting contests, what's the best way for a writer to get their work out there?
Oh, great question. Writers write to us. So I don't have money. How do I get my script read? And there's
Yeah.
just the old fashioned query, do it. Don't, I mean, it's hard work, but because you have to track down email addresses and write individual query letters and, get really good at it. But that can work. That can get your script read and it doesn't cost you a penny. But it really does help to have somebody in your corner. And there are some great services. We work with a couple of companies like Roadmap Writers and Coverfly and Nosto Screenwriting Lab and Screenwriting Retreats and
Great
Story
entities.
Labs. Yeah.
Really, really good entities.
Yeah. And Film Market Hub and Inktip where you can post your scripts. So you can look for some of these online resources that are ways for you to get your script posted and hopefully get people interested in taking a look and get them to request a copy of your script from you.
And Roadmap Writers, if they get a lot of people signed.
They do. They're
amazing.
Joey Tuccio and his company, I'm just endlessly impressed with the work they do. They have great educational services that they provide, and they've helped hundreds of writers hook up with the right rep. And that's
I always feel, yes. And I always feel like they live in that world of respect like we do, that we want to, have a good reputation. And the other places you mentioned, Coverfly, amazing. But I always get that feeling from Roadmap Writers.
Yeah. Yeah. They really work hard for writers. They really love writers and love doing what they do. And you can tell. I mean, I think.
And you're right, Inktip and Movie Bites, so much information in those.
There's a lot of information online that you can go on a few forums and listen to writers talking about Reddit or Done Deal Pro or wherever. And some of them can be very snarky, right? So watch out for that. Don't get too sucked into that. There are a lot of people who just like to be negative, and I don't think that's necessarily the best way to approach this business. But you get a lot of information from them as well.
Kristin, thank you so much for giving us this time, because I know how busy you are, and there's a very, very important date coming up very soon, July 15th. And everything's really crazy here at the PAGE Awards. So Thank you for spending this time with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Scores are coming in, you guys, and it's really exciting to see how well your scripts are doing. I just have to compliment all of you on your talent and your dedication and hard work and persistence and beautiful stories you've given us the opportunity to read. The comments I'm reading from the judges are just amazing. And I one thing I will tell you is I get the opportunity at the very end of the process each year to read all of the scripts that have advanced to the semifinals and finals. And Jennifer and Zoe do too. And it's the joy of the year for us because we get to read the best of the best. And so that way we're aware of what's out there and what we can help promote. And it's the best time of the year, very exciting. And I can't wait to read your work this year.
Thanks so much, Kristin.
Thanks, Sandy.
That's a wrap for the Writers Hangout. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like, and thrive. Till we get to hang out again, keep writing. The world needs your stories. The Writers Hangout is sponsored by the PAGE International Screenwriting Awards. Executive producer, Kristin Overn. Producers, Terry Sampson and Sandy Adomaitis. Music by Ethan Stoller.